Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Um, I wonder before we project anything, I wonder if we could just do some introductions. So I'll start. I'm Elizabeth Grettinger Cole. I work with the Department of Early Education and Care to support its strategic planning implementation. And I'll just introduce my colleague, Ola. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ola Faleti, and I work closely with Eli to support her in her work. And I will pass things on to Joy to introduce herself.
Thank you, Ola. Hi, everybody. I'm Joy Cohen, and I am the Director of Policy Development here at EEC. And I will pass it on to my colleague, Andrew.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. My name is Andrew Epic. I'm the Senior Associate Commissioner for Infrastructure here at EEC, and I'll pass it to our final panelist, Binal.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Binal Patel. I am the Chief Program Officer at Neighborhood Villages and really excited to join the conversation this afternoon. And I will pass it on to Jocelyn to quickly introduce herself.
Hi, Jocelyn Bound. I'm Associate Commissioner for Research and Program Innovation, and working both, I'm working with EEC's data and research efforts, as well as leading the work on program supports and educator supports.
Perfect. Thank you all. And for everyone who is attending today, thank you for being here. This is a bit of kind of the next phase of engagement for EEC. And so many of you may have attended sessions between December 2020 and March 2021, which were very much oriented towards providing a lot of feedback across a lot of subjects as the department was starting to develop a lot of different initiatives at the same time. And so all of that feedback has gone into developing some of what you'll hear about today. And so from the commissioner's update last week to regional town halls coming next week to this session, what we are engaged in now is what we think of as pressure testing, where things are in a really solid draft or in the middle of technology development or ready to launch or scale, where things are kind of getting to that point where the ideas are down on paper. And we want to come back and say, did we get this right? How does this sound? What are your concerns? What are your questions? What are you excited about? And how we should sort of make sure that we're communicating things over the next several months in a way that helps solidify them and also put the finishing touches on things in a way that's going to help get them to the right place. What you will hear about today are several topics related to educators in the workforce that are in very different stages of development. And so some are very far along and others are just at the very beginning of being on paper and kind of in circulation. So we'll frame those appropriately as we go. So let's look at the agenda for today and just talk a little bit about the context that we're working in as we think about educators in the workforce. So I think what we are hoping to cover are these kind of 6 core areas. So the first is positioning this conversation in the context of the strategic action plan for EEC, and then looking specifically at the idea that there is a workforce crisis, particularly in center-based settings right now, and thinking about some of the immediate shifts coming up that many of you may have heard about at board meetings or commissioner's update. And then look at 3 specific topics that are preparing for further development or launch or scaling, and get your thoughts about those. And so the questions we want to ask are here on the right, and we'll kind of pause after each one to say, how do you think about this when you consider its potential to support educators and programs or the providers that employ those educators? Do you see a lot of potential? Do you think you see potential? Are you kind of in the middle, neutral, or unsure? Do you have a lot of questions or concerns, or do you really feel this is the wrong direction? So we really want you to be honest with us and let us know what you think about each of these 3 topics. And then in the chat, we will ask you, what is the specific potential you see and what concerns do you have, and ask you to share more specifics. The other thing that I'll just add is that the Q&A feature is enabled today, and we hope you will ask all of your questions, because we will be collecting these throughout the session today and this evening, so that as we look forward to the next phase of talking about this, thinking about this, we're really considering all of the questions that you've posed, and we're finding ways to get answers to those questions out as soon as they're available. So let's talk about this in the context of the strategic plan. As many of you will know, the early childhood out of school time workforce is one of the 4 core areas of focus for the strategic plan, and one of the 3 constituencies for the department, along with children and families and programs. The hope is that when the strategic plan has been fulfilled, there is a greater sense that that workforce is professionally prepared, that they feel well supported both by EEC as well as by their employers, that they have reached a greater level of compensation or more adequate compensation in some cases, and that the workforce is more culturally and linguistically representative of the population that it serves. So ensuring that that pipeline of people being recruited into the workforce, coming through the pipeline of qualifications, training, development, are able to really fill some of these ideals. And at the same time, we know that we're in a workforce crisis, and these are just some of the things that either we have heard or that have been collected through surveying, through partners, that are telling us that it's kind of become a very urgent need. We're hearing about no-shows for interviews. We're hearing about long hours spent sort of combing through far more resumes than might have been necessary before. We're hearing about people getting offers and saying no because they're getting higher pay in a different field, and difficulty really reaching full capacity for all of those reasons. And so I am going to turn to Joy, who's going to talk about some of the really immediate, I think in very short order, some of the things that EEC will be launching or producing in order to address some of these things that have been really urgent in the field. So Joy, will you take over?
Thank you, Eli. Hi, everybody. Yes, and thank you, Leslie, for the comment. We have certainly heard and witnessed the workforce crisis. So I'm happy to be able to share with you some of the direction that EEC will be moving towards regarding educator qualification policy and procedure. On your screen right now are sort of our intentions for why we're revising the educator qualifications now through policy. 3 primary intentions. The first one being to make it easier for programs to hire new educators and staff. We're really doing this. Our intention is to address the immediate and urgent needs of the workforce right now. We want to be able to recognize in these efforts that access and cost issues can be prohibitive to educators and programs. So we want to offer things like equivalencies that may substitute for certain requirements and build in some flexibility. So in addition to being very, very clear about what is the absolute minimum foundational knowledge that's necessary to bring somebody in as a hire, we also want to be mindful that our field comes to the table with a variety of diverse backgrounds and experiences, and that those can and should be recognized and quantified through the lens of educator qualifications. A second intention here is that we want to ensure that there are pathways that new hires can move along a continuum in order to come into alignment with educator expectations so that they can be successful in the long term. And really this is about setting expectations for ongoing and gradual education advancement over a period of time, and making sure that that period of time includes realistic timelines that are feasible for educators that may be balancing full or part-time work with coursework. So really being intentional and mindful about specifically the audience for these requirements. A third intention here is that we increase flexibility in how qualifications are attained and verified. For example, looking at broader definitions of work experience to include work experience in a variety of settings with a variety of groups of children, and also to sort of credit both general work experience in addition to supervised work experience, to recognize both, offering, and we've heard this from the field multiple times over the past many years, offering a little more clarity around things like what exactly counts for a related field of study and what are some additional currencies that may apply for professional development, those sorts of clarifications and flexibilities, and also making sure that we're intentional about incorporating out of school time only relevant requirements and coursework. And then lastly, I want to just call out that we're really looking to empower program leaders to be able to hire promising staff who have maybe not yet met specific qualifications, but that intend to, throughout their time of employment, work to make progress in meeting those qualifications. So these are some of the intentions that we have as we're looking to develop, continue to develop these revised educator qualification policies. I'm going to talk a little bit more about specifically, if we can move to the next slide, please, Ola, thank you. We have heard consistently, either through public comment or looking at the commissioner's email box or conversations and feedback that we've heard from licensors, that the most pressing relief that program needs are sharing with us is that we need to focus on not only the policy, but also how we're operationalizing all of these pieces to be able to alleviate additional burden. So we are making major shifts in our operations to eliminate those barriers. For example, currently, when a new staff person is hired by a provider, they have to work through the professional qualification system to enter data and fill out an online application. And then the packet is submitted to the teacher qualifications unit at EEC. And then the program has to wait for the certificate from EEC before they can consider that educator qualified for the role. And often there are multiple additional steps throughout that process. In this new system that we're proposing shortly, a program leader will be reviewing and verifying the qualifications when they hire a new staff person. So that is going to significantly reduce the amount of time it takes to hire, the hiring process, and it eliminates the wait time that someone needs to wait for a certificate from EEC. I should just mention that the expectation will be that as program leaders are reviewing and verifying qualifications, there will be an expectation that that documentation used to verify an educator's qualifications are maintained on file and may be asked for upon a visit from a licensor. So definitely something we want to make sure everyone's aware of. But these are the immediate responses that EEC will be taking as we work to support the field in throughout this workforce crisis. Eli, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Joy. Perfect. So moving now to Beanal and Neighborhood Villages to talk about the launch of the professional pathways.
Perfect. Thank you, Eli, and good afternoon to everyone. As I mentioned in the beginning of the call, my name is Beanal. I am the Chief Program Officer at Neighborhood Villages, and I'm here this afternoon to talk to you all about the EEC Professional Pathways Program in partnership with EEC and Neighborhood Villages. So the Professional Pathways Program is essentially at the intersection of educators, providers, and higher ed, really focused on meeting the needs of educators in the field that are looking to either start a career in early education or out of school time or advance their current career. Partnering with higher ed institutions allows us to meet those needs in the most direct and accessible way. So in this new program, Neighborhood Villages will serve as a central hub where educators would be sent to us, given up-to-date information about coursework offerings, and supported step-by-step with the resources they need along the process. Our coordinators will be able to support educators in English, in Spanish, and we're looking at Portuguese and Arabic as well, because we know that that's what's required in the field right now. And in addition, providers who have large groups of educators that they're looking to onboard perhaps a cohort of brand new teachers or a cohort of educators that are looking to advance their credential could also reach out directly to neighborhood villages, and we would partner them with a higher ed institution that's able to offer a flexible course specifically for that cohort. So for example, 20 educators at a program looking for child growth and development wouldn't all individually have to go looking for a course, but that provider could reach out and partner with us, and we would help support them in finding the higher ed partner that could accommodate that need. So with the support and partnership with EEC, we're currently gathering information and data from higher ed partners, working with them with their college offerings, the modalities by which they're offered, when, and all of the details of the enrollment process to successfully match students and cohorts with the coursework that would best fit their needs. Ola, if we can do the second slide. Thank you. So how would this work? Starting in November, we will have much more information on our website, which is currently eecprofessionalpathways.com. And there'll be information for each pathway, whether it's an educator or provider or a coursework provider, to learn more information about the program. And there'll be an initial intake form for all the groups on our site, so we can gather the data up front and then have a neighborhood villages staff member, neighborhood villages coordinator would then reach out and follow up, perhaps ask more questions, and essentially do a little bit of academic advising to properly match that student or connect that cohort with the right college that offers the choice of courses that they need. So for example, a student that might be looking for infant toddler curriculum that can only take the class on weeknights and wants to do it online, we would work with that student to match them with the college that's offering the course and the modality that they're looking for and the exact course that they're looking for, and support them through the process. Currently, there is a Career Pathways grant that partners with community colleges throughout the state that offers many courses for free. There are also educators that can reach out seeking to advance their degree or looking to start a career in early ed. So it's really open to students looking for a degree and coursework in early education.
Perfect. I'm going to just share a poll that we hope you will respond to that is asking about what you think about the potential for this work in order to support educators, and in this case, the programs that seek to employ them with qualifications. And as you respond to that, I'm also going to put two questions in chat, which are what questions do you have and what specific potential do you see? And then we hope that you will chat to the host and the panelists to share what you see in terms of potential as well as any concerns. And as always, please feel free to add questions into the Q&A, and our panelists will look into that too. So I think now we'll move to talking about the registry.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Again, my name is Andrew Epic. I'm excited to come to you all today to talk about some of the work we've been doing on building out a robust educator registry and talk through some of the high-level items. That's what's coming in the short term, what we're envisioning for the long term, and give you a pretty quick overview and demo of what it's going to start to look like, because we've been working on this behind the scenes for a little while now, and excited to be at a stage where we can come to you all with something and get some ideas and solicit some feedback and hear concerns and opportunities through this project. Because one of the things we really are aiming to do here with this educational professional registry, this EEC registry, as said big on top on the slide here, is what we want is one-stop shopping for educator credentialing records, training documentation, and background record check processes. As many of you are aware, maybe perhaps painfully aware, through the work that you do with EEC and as part of your work as early educators and early educator leaders, it's often or on occasion a use case where you have to work through multiple systems, and you might have a system for background record checks, and you might have a system for the TQ and PQ databases, and you might have a system for LEAD. We have a lot of systems right now that are really aimed toward program specific activities, but what we're really trying to build here with the registry is a person-centric educator registry where an educator can log in and basically manage all of their information and all of the information that pertains to them that they carry with them wherever they go. Right now, a lot of our systems are really geared toward managing educators as part of a program, and that, of course, that's really important. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in this future state as we develop it. But it's also really important that an educator be able to log into a database, see their profile, see their information, be able to manage that, especially around background record checks. That's going to be really key. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second as well. But the idea is that we're building a professional registry on the Salesforce platform. Many of you are familiar with Salesforce and LEAD. LEAD, our licensing database, is also built on the same platform. So we're using some of the similar technology here to roll out for the registry in a phased approach. So at the first phase, we're going to be looking at a pretty basic educator registry profile. So profile creation, employment links between the educator and a program's LEAD profile. So if an educator works at one program, they'll be linked to that program in LEAD. If they work for multiple programs, they could be linked to multiple programs in the same system, because we know that educators often work in multiple programs, or if you leave one program and work at a different one, we want to be able to account for that. And then, of course, be able to have a better opportunity for programs to track information related to their employees. In the subsequent phases, and this is where it's really going to start to get exciting, at least for me, hopefully for all of you, as we start to show you what we're going to be coming up with, is full integration with all of our other systems. So background record checks, the strong start learning management systems, as well as absorbing and eventually improving the TQ, PQ, and FCC assistant processes and databases. Because right now, all of those processes are going to be, they're multiple systems, and we want to make sure that they're absorbed into one system. Again, the idea here is one-stop shopping. You log into one system, you manage all of your stuff. I saw one thing pop up on the chat already, which I'll just speak to right off the outset, is all of the work and stuff that you've done in legacy systems, so PQ, TQ, all of that will, of course, be retained and migrated over to this new system. We're still figuring out how those processes are going to work, so stay tuned for that. But one thing I just want to say at the outset is, it will be very much our goal that nothing will be lost. All of the hard work that folks have done will be retained. And obviously, as we work on implementing an educator credential and the other things that we're going to be talking about in these sessions, the registry will be able to account for that. So what will the registry do? Well, it's going to do a lot of things. It'll allow candidates and programs to match for employment in a more streamlined way. It'll allow educators to be able to track their experiences, to build competency and expertise throughout their career, which is really exciting. And again, some of our systems currently do that, but this will be a much more robust and user-friendly way of doing that. We'll have full integration with the professional qualifications, to speak to the fact that nothing will be lost in the previous systems. What's really important we will allow providers and programs to easily understand a candidate's eligibility for a specific program. So a much more efficient way for a program to understand whether a candidate or an applicant has a background record check that's suitable for employment and a credential that's suitable for employment in a way that's much more streamlined than some of our offline processes and multiple processes. What's really exciting about this new process is going to be much more efficient for candidates to effectively switch roles between the EEC ecosystem. And as I mentioned, it's not uncommon for educators to work in multiple programs or move between programs, and some of the processes and technology systems we've developed unfortunately don't handle that super well. So we need to be able to manage that a little bit better, and the registry and its integrations with LEAD and our other processes will be able to do that. All of this to really aim for reducing delays for recruitment and hiring through an optimized electronic system, to speak to what we talked about earlier. We understand that there's a workforce crisis in early education, and it is incumbent on EEC to provide technological resources to make programs and educators' lives easier in navigating a challenging landscape. And we're not doing our job if we haven't delivered that. And that's what we're going to be aggressively building now and throughout the rest of this year and into next year. Of course, we want to be able to track workforce trends to inform system-wide strategies for enhanced workforce recruitment and professional development approaches. So as we gather additional data about educators and programs and staffing, some of that, of course, already occurs, but we'll be able to make more strategic decisions on an agency level about how to continue to support the workforce. And of course, FCC family child care processes will be adapted for the specific needs of those educators. So making sure that family child care, processes and systems such as FCC assistant, certification and onboarding is accounted for in a way that is more efficient than some of the processes that we currently have. If you can move to the next slide. So I'll actually be providing a very high level demo here as well, but I wanted to show a couple just screenshots of what we're going to be looking at as far as the Educator Registry. And I can walk through a couple processes in a second as well. But just to show you what this is going to look like at a very high level. For folks on this this session who have logged into LEAD before and used LEAD to interact with EEC, you might think that this looks a little bit similar, or perhaps is quite similar to some of the information or view that you see for that, and that's intentional. The idea here is that because we're building this on the Salesforce platform, we're going to be able to gain a lot of efficiencies from Salesforce. So being able to log into an Educator Registry, you'll be able to see a screen like this. If you're an individual educator, you'll be able to see a professional registry card right there at the bottom left of the screen, and that's going to be the first big initiative that we're rolling out here. If you're a LEAD user as well, one of the things that's kind of nice about this is that you'll be able to see your personal Educator Registry information in the same login as how you access your LEAD profile for the program or programs that you operate for LEAD on. So for family childcare, that'll be pretty much everybody. And for group and school age, for those LEAD empowered users, you should be able to have a much more streamlined process. Trying to get rid of multiple logins, trying to get rid of multiple systems. We'll get there. It's a process, but that's what we're aiming for with this. And just wanted to give you a sense of what this interface is going to look like. Before we jump to the next slide, I'll also mention that our goal here is to make this as friendly and different technology as possible. So we understand that educators and staff and really just the nature of the world right now is that we don't all access technology systems just on a computer sitting at your desk, that you're often on your phone trying to do something quickly, or on a tablet, or any of the myriad devices that you use to interact with for technology. And this Educator Registry project will be compatible with mobile devices, tablets, and your traditional desktop or laptop computers, Apple or PC. All of the configuration should be accounted for. Again, one of the benefits of using a platform like Salesforce is that all of that functionality is sort of built in. So we're really excited about that. If you can move to the next slide. One of the other processes we're going to be engaged in as we launch this process is making sure that educators can find the programs that they work for. So we're going to be implementing a process called program association, which we'll talk about at a much deeper level in later sessions down the road as we get closer to releasing this this product and this functionality. But basically making it as user-friendly for an educator. If you know you work for a program, or if you're about to start working for a program, to find the program in the system. There's multiple ways of searching for a program. This is just a screenshot of what that will look like. So if you know the program name, if you happen to know the program ID, it's not required. You put the street address, the city, the zip code. It works pretty similar to the childcare search if you've used that, if you had the opportunity to use that in the way to search for programs. So the educators will be able to find the programs that they work for and basically send a request to say to get on your staff roster, which is what we're going to see on the next screen. And this is a sample of what we're going to be eventually building in this process, is a robust staff roster that'll be built into LEAD. So for program users who have LEAD access, you'll be building your staff roster as part of this process, and ultimately building a robust technological roster for your educators. And then this will continue to grow as we build additional functionality. So as BRC gets integrated, you'll be able to see suitability status of educators here. As credentialing gets built in, you'll be able to see the credentialing status of folks, CPR and first aid as well. We're going to be making that functionality available for users. So we're really excited about some of this functionality, because I know a lot of this happens offline or in customized systems or in paper processes. And what we're really trying to streamline here is a more user-friendly, functional way to do the work, so that you're spending more time working with your educators, working with the children in your program, and less time dealing with paperwork and less time dealing with technology systems when you're having to log into 4 or 5 different systems and still not getting what you need. So that's our ultimate goal with this process. Next slide. So as far as timelines of what we're looking at, and then I'll jump to a very quick demo, as long as Eli, you think I have some time. Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I'm good for time. That we'll be rolling out the Educator Registry in phases. And you'll be receiving much more information. Again, this is sort of the medium level dive into the registry. And as we get closer to release, we'll be issuing a release date and much more guidance and support, including documentation and trainings and videos and all of the suite of resources that we would, of course, provide for something like this. For group and school age and funded programs, we're looking at a fall/winter release. That would be the Educator Registry, and you'd have access to your staff roster and be able to start these processes. For family childcare, we're looking at a winter to early spring release to incorporate family childcare. And then for residential and placement programs, we're looking at a release for fiscal year 2023, which is really the latter half of calendar year 22, if you don't know the state fiscal years. So with all of this, again, this is just our sort of first effort to come to you and show you a little bit of what this is going to be, but there'll be much more targeted communications, training, technical assistance, so that programs and educators can leverage this professional registry centralized database and really give you that support that you need. So I'll walk through very quickly because I can share my screen. Let's see if I can do this without, I think whoever's sharing their screen has to stop and then I can do it. Cool.
Perfect.
Awesome. Eli, you can see, right? Which I'll assume if you can, then everybody else can. Cool. So this is in our test environment, but I wanted to queue up just a little bit in part to show you what this is going to look like. That's a little bit more kind of functional than the screenshots. And also, if you have ideas, thoughts, concerns, feedback, feel free to drop them in the chat. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A. This is going to be a product that's continuing to evolve over the next year. So we really, and into next year, into calendar year 22. So, no time is too soon to say, what about this? And it's perhaps something we accounted for around like background checks. We know that's going to be coming a little bit later, but it might be something we hadn't thought of. And this is what's so great about doing this kind of outreach, is to get some ideas and feedback from you all. So as you can see, I log in and you get my name right here. This is assuming I've already created an account or if I've already been enabled. I'll have my unique identifier here, which will link me to other systems. As I mentioned, if you're a lead user, you probably have seen screens like this, like your program licensing and your childcare search, and of course, the grants management application, which we launched a couple months ago to get your ARPA stabilization funding. The new piece that's going to be coming here is the professional registry card. So if I click on this card, it's going to bring me to my professional registry dashboard. So I'm not going to go too into the weeds on this here because there's a lot of features that we'll be explaining in later sessions. But here is going to be your overall splash screen as an educator to get all the information about you. So at this early stage of the project, it'll be your personal information, some of your educational background and PQ information, as well as your CPR and first aid certification if you have that. You'll also be able to manage your programs. So for the programs that you work for or are affiliated with, you'll be able to see them right here. And as I mentioned, getting added to the staff roster, you'll be matching with your programs to make sure that you're on their staff roster and the programs can find you and they continue to build up. And that's going to, of course, take some time, but we'll be working closely with you all to make sure that that happens efficiently. If I go back, so if I was working for a new program or I was about to work for a new program and I wanted to find them, this is the other screen that we saw. You click on associate with a program. If I was looking for a program that just happened to start with ABCD, I would click on that, scroll down and see all of the different programs that are available here. For family childcare, it'll work the same way. You can see there'll be family childcare. Whoops. There we go. You can choose from family childcare, group and school age, and funded programs as well. So family childcare providers are also on this to be associated with. Maybe none in Alston. Let's try Agawam. Here we go. So you can see all of this is information that we pull from our lead database. And again, it aligns with what we have on the childcare search as well. So assuming that I am associated with a program, I use this record because not only in this test system am I an educator, but I also just happen to be the licensee of a test program. So if I was to go into my new staff roster, GSA large test, this is the program that I am a lead user for. And you'll see I have access to my staff roster here. So you'll be able to see the list of staff members at your program. If they're inactive staff members, folks who used to work for you but no longer work for you, they'll be listed on the inactive, and pending tab will be any new educators that are being associated with your program. So just wanted to give a pretty quick tour of some of this functionality because again, this is going to be coming sooner rather than later, but at the same time, we want to have a sense of feedback, ideas, thoughts from you all on if this is something that, you know, looks good but needs more, you know, something that we should be thinking about as far as functionality. As I said, this is going to be something that is, you know, continuing to develop over time, but we're hopeful. Again, the goal here is to make your lives and your educators, all the educators, program leaders' lives a lot easier and more efficient by having one-stop shopping in a technology environment to be able to manage all processes. So with background checks, health and safety trainings, and credentialing coming down the pike to be developed in here, there'll be some really amazing opportunities to create a more seamless experience. So
Great.
I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Andrew. I know there are a lot of questions in the Q&A and the chat, and I know Andrew will have answers to some of those over the next few minutes. But in the meantime, I wanted to launch a poll, which is to ask for the professional registry that Andrew just described. What kind of potential do you see? Give us a sense of your sort of gut reaction after hearing a little bit about it and seeing the walkthrough. Do you definitely see potential? Do you think that you do? Are you neutral or unsure? I'm sure you all have questions, but are the questions standing in the way of your feeling like there's potential here? Or do you think that we're actually headed in the wrong direction? So if you could just take a moment and reply to the poll, that would be really helpful for us. Questions, please add to the Q&A. And then any concerns, so something that's not quite a question, but it's something that you want to sort of express concern around, or something that you're excited, that really got your attention or that you're excited about, please chat it to the panelists so that they can include that with their project teams as they start to develop this in the next phase of work. So I think that the next section is focused on educator credentialing. And just, I spoke earlier when we started about how things are in very different stages of development. And I want to just frame up to say that the registry Andrew described is pretty far along for just that initial launch. It's getting close. Although it's iterative, as Andrew described. So it's one of those things that will continue to get feedback and be refined as things go. The educator credential is a little bit further behind. And so it's one of those concepts that's just getting kind of put on paper and circulating and starting to get a lot of kind of feedback about what people think and where things go and how it could be used. And so so Jocelyn's going to speak a little bit more about the direction, I guess, on the educator credential.
Great, thanks, Eli. Yeah, no, I think just reiterating what Eli said, I mean, what I'm presenting here, and for those of you who watched the board meeting, you saw some of this as well, is really our conceptualization of what the credential could look like. And this is a great time to start getting your feedback, your questions, your guidance around when you think about what this could mean for the field. What should we be considering and thinking about as we develop it? But as a starting place, I just wanted to frame out, what are we trying to accomplish with this? What are our hopes that we can successfully accomplish with a credential? We want to start by offering a way for all educators to be recognized for their knowledge, skills, and expertise. And I think this is a very important point. We're trying to create something that is integral to a professional's development as a professional, not something that's seen as external or another hoop to jump through, but really reflects what the field does to develop themselves and build expertise, and to credit and recognize the expertise that educators have developed over their years of experience. And in doing this, we want to provide a shared understanding for both educators and their employees of how job responsibilities and the professional development that educators engage in can lead to credential growth. So the opportunities that are really inherent in an educator's job that build expertise, those are the things that we want to reflect in growth in the credential as well. And we want to give educators a way to build expertise and skills from one, or to build on expertise and skills from one position to another, and to carry them with them throughout their career. So we recognize that an educator may start in a center-based program and move to a family childcare, or vice versa. We could have movement into an OST program. There are a lot of different pathways that educators take, and we don't want the systems to be so disconnected that an educator whose inherent experience of the movement is ongoing professional growth. We want a credential that recognizes it and is transferred from role to role. And we want to provide multiple pathways for professionals to build their practice and their expertise through their work experience, through training, through coursework, through professional development, degree and certificate programs. So all the myriad of ways that educators build their professional skills and knowledge, we want to make sure that we build those into our thinking around the credential and what gives you credit in the contents of a credential. Go to the next slide. So this is very much in draft, as you see in red. But what this schematic is trying to do is really to just show and give an insight into the ways in which we're thinking about different levels of the credential, and also the two different pathways that we are mapping out for to guide educators through this. So both thinking about, how do you move through a credential from a work experience perspective? How might you move through different levels of expertise in a credential through a degree path? And we've gotten a fair amount of feedback already. So, we're really collecting and working on the schematic. It's not perfect by any means. So if you've given feedback in the past and you don't see it here yet, it just means this is all under development and it's a complex concept to show. But one thing I will highlight, it's also important, even though these look like two separate pathways, we would expect that educators might pick and choose their process of movement and move from pathway to pathway. So you can imagine an educator that has an AA using that as one step in their pathway, but then they move in and really focus on their work experience and their development as a professional in the work context to move to the next level of the credential. So this is a flexible system for educators. The other thing that I want to call out is if you look at that sort of purple box at the bottom where it says work activities, this is actually underlying all of those pathways. What we're looking at as central to our conceptualization of the credentialing levels is identifying the work activities that build competency. So these are the things that you do as an educator: planning your interactions with children, your reflective interactions with children, thinking about how you're scaffolding learning, thinking about how you're intentionally engaging with families, all the different things that educators do at different levels of skill and expertise are things that we want to recognize and build into the expectations that we have for what we look at and consider as an important part of the educator's pathway through the credential. So if we start by just, almost done, but not quite. Start on the left-hand side of the schematic here. You can see this is how we're thinking about the different levels of professional growth. So the foundational level, and you can see here, this is the same across the pathways. It's really, you've gotten your EEC Essentials training, you have a high school diploma or GED, but you're coming in fresh. You do not have experience. You're not going to be expected to supervise children. You're coming in as an assistant to support a classroom team and to learn as you're in your role as an assistant. And then if you move on to level one, that's really the first level of the educator component of the credential. So here you've been on the work experience side, you've been in the field for a year. And during that year, you have some documented work in the work activities we've called out at the appropriate level, whereby you're assisting, helping, and supporting the educator team in a classroom and building your competency during that year, and are now ready to move into a formal educator role. On the degree side, another pathway into this level would be to have a high school diploma and demonstrate that you are engaged in ongoing higher ed coursework. So you're engaged in a CDA program, maybe you're engaged in an EEC certificate program, but you are in training through the higher ed path. If you then move on to the second level of this is from a work experience perspective, an educator who's been working 3 years or more, and again, has demonstrated work experiences in related activities, but in this level, facilitating, instructing, coordinating care. So this is an active educator taking leadership in the educator role in the classroom. On the degree path, this is somebody with an associate's degree and the relevant experience. Looking to level 3 of the credential, this is an educator potentially with 5 years or more experience. And at this point, you're assisting and guiding practice of others. So not only are you do you really have strong experience and expertise in teaching in your own classroom, you're starting to move into roles like being a mentor to other educators, really supporting a team within a classroom. You're taking on some leadership and thinking about sharing your expertise with others. For this role on the degree path, this is somebody with a bachelor's degree in relevant experience. And then if you look at the highest level, level 4, this is someone with 7 years or more. And here you're moving into planning, designing, leading. This is somebody who is moving into a leadership role, who isn't just running their own classroom, but in a position to lead across groups of educators. And this is a position with a master's degree and relevant experience. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. So in thinking about how our process in building out this system and moving into a phase when we're ready to operationalize the system and how that integrates with the registry that Andrew talked about, we really do want the registry to be the place where we operationalize the credential. This is going to be the place where we verify the credential, and the credential record will sit in the registry. So this follows the educator through all the jobs and across their career. This record will be maintained in the system. We will have the option for direct upload of documents. So we're moving away from any mailing processes to really centralizing everything through the electronic processes this registry will facilitate. We'll have the opportunity to track coursework in the registry. We will be able to track roles and years of experience to support the ability for the registry to credit the job experience to the credential. And when we think about how we will transition from our current system into the credential in the registry, we're not going to ask that existing EEC data be entered again. And this includes information about Strong Start models. We are looking at how we can integrate across our systems on the back end to transfer information into the registry system. Now, again, just a reminder, this is not phase one. It will take us some time to build into the more robust development of the registry that I'm talking about here, but I think this answers some of the questions that were coming up early as well around what capacity will this registry have over time. And then in thinking about, how will we transition into the credential process, we will credit all educators who are currently in our registry at a level that's appropriate for their current job role. So we're really going to try to enter people in. You don't need to come in and reapply for the credential that you would need for your current job. We will put you into an appropriate level. But we'll also provide opportunities for educators to come back and say, hey, I want to start jumping in right away and, thinking about moving up in this credential. And this will include both the TQ certificates as well as the educators that are hired under the current revised educator qualifications policies that we've been discussing. And it will also include many ways to verify expertise. So again, thinking about the role of higher ed in verifying expertise, but also recognition of professional development activities and the types of work experiences that educators demonstrate over the course of their career. And so, we hope that this will provide an opportunity to both have the information centralized in one place that educators' employees can access, but also share the same framework about the ways in which particular job activities help an educator with their progression through credential levels.
So before we move on, let's just do another poll about the credentialing that Jocelyn just walked through, keeping in mind that it's very much still sort of baking, but the concepts are sound, the concepts are there. Is it an area that you definitely see potential? You think you do? Do you feel neutral or unsure? Knowing that we all have questions, us included, about the direction, are those questions standing in the way of the potential in your mind because they're more like concerned questions? Or do you not believe that this is the right direction at all? And so I would love to just, if you could take a moment to weigh in on this poll, we would appreciate it. And then please continue to ask questions in the Q&A. I know that all of our panelists are here to respond to any of the questions that pertain to their area if they have the answer. If they do not have the answer, then it is being logged and taken back for the team to grapple with and try to figure out what the answer is or think about further communications in order to provide more clarity on that topic. And then finally, if you have kind of concerns about things that you've heard, or if there are things that got you particularly excited, please do put those into the chat. I'm just going to put credentialing thoughts so that we know that everything that you put from here forward is about the credential, and let us know what's on your mind. So I do also want to share that we have upcoming engagement next week. and into the future. And so we will have regional town halls running all through next week and some of the following week. And those are going to be more regional in focus, so a little bit more local information, touch points with supervisors, with regional directors, with some of those EEC units that are targeted to regions, like legal and background record checks, et cetera. We will be covering a lot of this same work, but focusing a little bit more on some of the policies and the operational changes that Joy referenced today. But we intend to go into more detail as we'll be even closer to having kind of the detail that will give the sense of what to expect for those who attend. And then we'll also be collecting questions that will help with future communications around those policy and operational shifts. And then, of course, general updates for each regional office. And then EEC has board meetings coming up over the next 3 months. The October board meeting is next Tuesday, and we'll focus on programs, thinking about program supports, program quality, and kind of the holistic picture of where programs are headed, update on the licensing regulation revisions, et cetera. So please do attend that through the live YouTube streaming of the board meeting. Or to submit your thoughts, please participate in public comment. All of those instructions are at the link copied here, or we've included some Google search terms so that you can find the board materials easily on our website, because we know that's not always easy. So lastly, I think we do have a couple more minutes, and we will, I think, as panelists, maybe just stay here and continue to answer in the Q&A, continue to read the chat and respond. But we might just go off camera so that those of you who want to leave feel like you can sort of bow out. And we will reply to as much as we can in the time that we have left until it's time for the meeting to close. Panelists, is there anything I'm missing or anything that you wanted to add? I know there was a request to share the polls, and so I'll share. Here is the result on the credentialing poll. So questions, about 34% total are either neutral, unsure, or have questions. And then I was just saying before we started, math is not always my forte, but about 67% either think they see potential or definitely see potential in the credential. And then I will share the poll results from the professional registry as well. So it looks like a lot of excitement, about 84% definitely see potential or think they see potential, 7% neutral, 5% unsure, and 4% have questions. So that gives me confidence that the closer we get to development and launch of a concept, the closer we get to the way that it should be in your eyes. And so I think that's actually really great to hear for the registry, and gives us a sense of where we have room to grow on the credential. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. And thank you for all of the questions and chats. And we will just go off camera and keep replying as fast as we can. Thank you again.